You can be sure the PA will always dance to the ANC's tune. The ANC bought a motion of no confidence, or the ANC coalition, one of the smaller parties, bought a motion of no confidence in Mpho Palazzi. And despite the fact that Gayton and the PA were part of our coalition, they voted with the ANC and EFF to get rid of Mpho Palazzi. The first coalition we had with them and the second coalition we were negotiating with them, every time they've actually had to go to the vote, they voted with the ANC and EFF. So they just play us like a fiddle.
Now, many people have actually wondered that since the Patriotic Alliance led by Gayton Mckenzie is a much more business-friendly kind of party that actually, respects property rights, unlike the EFF that wants property, land expropriation without compensation, many people still wonder why the PA and the DA are unable to agree or come to agreement, especially in terms of coalition. Patriotic Alliance boss Gayton Mckenzie has already spoken bitterly about the DA, especially Helen Zille, and Helen Zille also fires back at Gayton Mckenzie whenever she has the opportunity. Now, in this video, she's actually speaking about some of the reasons why the DA and the PA would be unable to sit and have a healthy coalition agreement in the effect or in the opportunity that it arises. Let's listen to what Helen Zille has to say about the Patriotic Alliance and Gayton Mckenzie, and I'll be back for some interesting analysis on the DA and its interpretation of the Government of National Unity.
We've come to the conclusion that because of our direct experience in Johannesburg of the Patriotic Alliance, that there is no chance of establishing a stable coalition with them in the fold. Now, let me tell you why. They will make all kinds of promises and protestations, and we've included them on the basis of those promises and protestations twice in our coalition. You'll remember at first they voted with the ANC at the end of 2021. At the beginning of 2022, they wanted to be joining our coalition and wanted to come back and demanded a make-up position, to which we acceded. And we brought them in. And we had a signed coalition agreement. So we thought, great, they're on board now. They promised that they would stay the course to 2026. About 6 weeks later, there was a motion of no confidence in the DA Speaker, Vasco da Gama. What did the PA do? They voted with the ANC and EFF to remove our Speaker, even though they were part of our coalition. And they used that turmoil to try and negotiate a better deal for themselves, under the threat that they would leave if we didn't give it to them. Then the ANC bought a motion of no confidence, or the ANC coalition, one of the smaller parties, bought a motion of no confidence in Mpho Palazzi. And despite the fact that Gayton and the PA were part of our coalition, they voted with the ANC and EFF to get rid of Mpho Palazzi. When we could prove that that vote was irregular, Mpho was restored. And when there was another vote, yet again, the PA voted with the ANC and EFF against Mpho Palazzi. Now, we had introduced them to our coalition not once, but twice, despite the fact that they'd never voted for us, despite the most committed promises that they made to stay the course, despite even offering us 10 million rand, which we turned down, as a guarantee that they would stay the course. And yet every time they had the opportunity to do so, they voted with the ANC and EFF. Now, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. And in the very last round, this last Friday, Action South Africa and the other smaller parties brought into the PA's promise that the PA would vote with them. And their strategy was, and they told us as much, that they would beat us in the first round of voting, in which no one would get above 50%. That they would beat us and we would fall out, and then the runoff would be between the ANC and EFF and the other smaller parties in the coalition, with a PA who would vote with them. That was their entire strategy was based on. We said, you're being played. The PA is not going to vote with you. We are not going to fall out in the first round because you're being bluffed again. And what happened? They were played. the Patriotic Alliance did not vote with Action South Africa and the Freedom Front Plus. And in fact, their vote gave the ANC and EFF again an overall majority. So every time the PA has made a solemn commitment to vote with us, in the first coalition we had with them, in the second coalition we were negotiating with them, and now again with Action SA and the Freedom Front Plus, every time they've actually had to go to the vote, they voted with the ANC and EFF. So they just play us like a fiddle. They're also in coalition with the ANC in at least, I did a count, at least 11 other municipalities across South Africa. Now this gives the ANC massive leverage over the PA, because the ANC can say, if you don't do as we're telling you, in Johannesburg, we're going to kick you out of all these 11 coalitions that we have with you. So that's why you can be sure the PA will always dance to the ANC's tune.
Yeah, interesting speech by Helen Zille. Really, what do you guys think? I think that this she's actually given an account of a rift that occurred, during, I think there was the Johannesburg coalition, where it was agreed that many things would have, many agreements between the DA and the PA would take effect, but the PA always voted and gave their votes to the ANC and the EFF in that regard. And as a result, the DA has grown to see the PA as a betrayal, sort of as a kind of like, we do not trust your word, we do not understand where you're going, we do not understand if you're with us or against us. And so as a result, Helen Zille actually finds a lot of problems working with the Patriotic Alliance. And since Gayton Mckenzie always speaks about the fact that the PA is the kingmaker, so whenever the votes turn for the EFF, the ANC, MK, DA, whatever, the PA would then be that determinant that determines who would get its own vote to increase or get to a majority, so that party becomes. So Gayton Mckenzie enjoys that power of being the kingmaker, you understand? And that's actually been seen as a threat by the DA party, especially Helen Zille, as she profusely accuses the Patriotic Alliance here of gross betrayal. But anyway, for this video, I thought to analyze the DA's interpretation of the government of national unity. What are the DA's non-negotiables in trying to form and work into a unity government with the parties around? Obviously, we would expect that the DA and the EFF would never be able to sit, head eye to eye, eyeball to eyeball to make negotiations or policy designs in that regard. And also, Helen Zille has actually vociferously, giving outbursts against Jacob Zuma, and that he's corrupt and that he's not fit for public office in South Africa because of the corruption allegations against him and all that. So it's really interesting how the DA will fit into this government of national unity being negotiated at the moment and led by the ANC. But anyway, on SABC News it speaks about how the Democratic Alliance says that it will only agree to be a part of the African National Congress's proposed government of national unity if the MK party, Umkhonto we Sizwe party, the EFF, the Economic Freedom Fighters, and the Patriotic Alliance are excluded. So in other words, the DA wants to work with the ANC as long as there's an exclusion of the EFF, the MK, and the PA. So this is his agreement. So in other words, if the ANC pulls in the DA will be glad to work with the ANC and maybe like the IFP, the Inkatha Freedom Party, the Freedom Front Party, and probably some other smaller parties, which it feels that are aligned with its neoliberal way of existence, with its neoliberal outlook to development, in South Africa. But as long as the left-wing, leftist-oriented parties in the likes of the EFF, the MK, and also the Patriotic Alliance, even though the Patriotic Alliance shares some views with the DA's neoliberalism in that regard, the DA party isn't ready to work with the PA, and we find that reason in this video being the fact that the PA has always betrayed in her own explanation, Helen Zille's explanation. The PA has always betrayed the votes that it should give to the DA and always giving its vote to the ANC or probably even the EFF, even as it fronts a neoliberal stand, a market-oriented, business-friendly kind of like perspective to development. And so it's really interesting that the DA would be willing to work with the ANC as long as the EFF, the MK, and the PA are excluded from that kind of national unity. So it speaks about how that ANC President Ramaphosa announced that the ANC would be forming a government of national unity with a broad broad group of opposition parties, and that the ANC has laid down stringent conditions under which parties would be included in this pact. The DA says that it hopes to receive details on how the government of national unity will operate in its next meeting with the ANC. We don't yet have reports of that meeting, but I'll be making a video with John Steenhuisen, who is in, when he speaks about how the meeting. A meeting about this had actually been done between the ANC and the DA, and I'm making a video about that. It also speaks about how the DA national spokesperson, Werner Horn, says that the president was not very specific in terms of the characteristics of such a government of national unity, and that they would hopefully get some more details from the ANC, and then the duty of that negotiating team, which the DA set aside, would then bring the specifics back to the federal executives. And also it speaks about how the Federal Council will also have to decide, but even the smallest inclusion of those three parties, well, in terms of the current resolution of the federal executive, it will be very difficult, if not impossible, for the DA to be included. So the DA is really vociferously very against the inclusion of the EFF, the MK, and the PA party in any government of national unity, being sponsored by the ANC at the moment. And it's really interesting because it speaks about how I don't really know what kind of government of national unity it would be like if the EFF, MK, or PA are excluded. So it appears to me, I hear a scenario where there will be a governing body, but then the EFF and the MK would be outside that body, really critiquing what the government is doing, and that it wouldn't be in the parliament definitely, but it would be outside the walls of the parliament, really causing a lot of tensions and critiquing, and a lot of bitterness, I think, would be sown if these parties are not included. And so, but also it would also be I know Helen Zille speaks about how coalitions have been really difficult. Most of the coalitions they have partaken within have been really difficult. It's usually even as difficult as even to set out a policy, because every party has its own different agenda, and every party has its own different worldviews and epistemes, how it sees the world, how it sees reality, and how it sees South Africa. And even to put down a policy in such a coalition, in such a probably a government of national unity, would be a headache. But anyway, we'll keep watching and really trying to understand how this whole thing functions, and how it would differ. I think I'll be making a video soon to really understand deeply how the government of national unity in 1994 really worked, and also how some other countries have actually approached this whole thing about government of national unity, how it went down in Italy, how it also went down in like Kenya, for example. These two countries have experimented with a government of national unity, and how it transcended and probably has lived up to time. But anyway, these are some of the issues that Helen Zille raises that makes the DA really find it difficult to work together with the Patriotic Alliance and also Gayton Mckenzie, while Gayton Mckenzie also has his own views about the DA party, even though both of them share this whole market friendliness in that regard, and a more neoliberal approach to development of society. But anyway, I don't know, what do you guys think about Helen Zille's speech here? Share your thoughts in the comments.